Hey, what's going on, you guys? It's your boy S Review coming back for another video. And this video is going to be about why GT was a fail. Now, my homeboy Darius19R, he gave his thoughts and opinion on this video about 3 days ago, and I thought it was an interesting topic to get into. You know, GT, in my opinion, it was a big failure. It didn't really do too good for me. It was one of my least favorite series. You know, I'm going to get into some reasons why, but first I'm going to give you a little recap, a little synopsis on what GT is. Now, GT is nothing but like a fan service project to me, you know, because it wanted to continue the story of Dragon Ball Z, but it was only supervised by Akira Toriyama. He didn't really write it. He wasn't really, you know, doing the script, doing the storytelling. He only contributed his art style. You know, he did the character design for those characters like the Super Saiyan 4 and all those other characters and the enemies and stuff. Yeah, so that's one reason right there. If you know, the story wasn't done by the original author, and I think that's what killed it. You know, it wasn't done by that creator, and you know, it just ended up being just plain shit, if you ask me. But I think they were trying to do with GT. You know, GT being right after Goku leaves and he goes to train off with Oob. It started off real good. You know, you get an awesome scene with Goku and Oob training up in the lookout tower. But soon after that, you kind of see what they're trying to do. You know, they're trying to combine the elements of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. You see Goku meet off with Emperor Pilaf and his minions, which we haven't seen in years. I thought they would be dead, but they tried to bring them back, and they wish that Goku was a kid again. So, you know, it lets you know right there, okay, they're going for that approach. Let's see Goku go on adventures as a little kid. And that just killed it for me, because you can't combine the two. You can't combine Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, because there were two separate stories that were good in their own way. You know, Dragon Ball was about a kid who expanded his horizon, who got out to experience all these great fights. It was like a mystical adventure. You know, you don't know what's going to happen. It had that element of surprise. You know, it was just so many things that I loved about Dragon Ball. But when you get into Dragon Ball Z, you know, it explains why Goku has a tail, and it becomes like an intergalactic battle royale. You know, it's not only you just fighting fighters on Earth and everything. You're fighting people out in space. You're fighting different aliens. Goku realizes that he's not from Earth. He realizes he's an alien, and he goes out to fight all these, you know, these different other specimens. Yeah, so you just can't combine the two. I mean, Kid Goku was like complete utter crap. I didn't like that. I wanted to see how things would progress with Goku as an adult, how far he came along in training, you know, what he was going to do with Oob. But they failed to show that, and that's a big reason right there. Like, if you don't have the original work of the author, the creator, you're not going to get a good story unless you are very good and you're, you know, very dedicated. You know, like I think her name is Aoshi. I forget her first name. Aoshi. She's doing the manga for Dragon Ball SD, and you also got the episode of Bardock. I think she's the only one that can pull it off. But yeah. Now, another thing about Dragon Ball GT, it's like the continuity was so thrown off. And I think that's a main reason why Funimation, they decided to give you only like a set few of episodes, because they didn't really give you all the episodes the first time around, because they knew themselves. I think they knew that the continuity was going to be screwed up, because we got the lost episodes later. I think like a couple of months later after the series, you know, got finished, and you know, you got to see all these villains like General Real Dude, Super Android 17. And the Dark Dragons. Now these enemies, like, they failed in comparison to the Dragon Ball Z enemies, because for the most part the Dragon Ball Z enemies, especially the main antagonists, they were all OP villains that, you know, they made you think, okay, how are we gonna go about beating this guy? You know, it seemed like GT was rushed, because, you know, GT it had introduced some powerful villains, but I wasn't feeling it. I was not feeling that shit, because Goku, He couldn't do none of the shit. Like, the scaling was wrong. We didn't know how powerful Goku was when he was a kid. He couldn't go into his Super Saiyan 2 or 3. He couldn't go into those modes. He could only go into Super Saiyan 1. And that's what killed it for me. And he goes to fight all these villains who we know he could take out if he wanted to, you know. Like when he went to go fight General Rildo, he could have took General Rildo out like it wasn't nothing up in its adult form. But, you know, since he couldn't go to Super Saiyan 2 and Super Saiyan 3, he couldn't do it, you know. So he had to find out another way to beat him or whatever. And the enemies, man, they just lacked. They just lacked in comparison, like the Dragon Ball Z enemies did, you know. And that's another thing. Like, all the enemies on Dragon Ball Z, they were powerful in a sense where they had longer story arcs. Like, Frieza had his own story arc. The androids had their own story arc. Cell had his own story arc. You know, all the enemies were OP, and you just didn't know how they were gonna beat them. Like, they, you know, on Dragon Ball Z, you know, they got their ass kicked a lot. You know, they got beat a lot. Like, all the fighters, they had to go back to the drawing board to see how they were going to defeat these characters. It was all about training to get strong, you know. But in GT, you don't really see anybody just training hard. You just see Goku, Trunks, and Pan. You know, they get into a fight with an enemy. Trunks get his ass whooped. Pan gets her ass whooped. And it's up to Goku to save the day. And that's all in the first fight. You know, like a first fight with somebody would last like at least 10 or 15 episodes, and that's that. Goku eventually beats him. He doesn't go train or anything. That's one of the main nitpicks I had about it. You know, and then the scaling of everybody's power was pretty much off. We didn't know what anybody could do. Like, I remember when I heard about GT, I was like, okay, you know, everybody, it's like a year's been going by. Everybody should have been doing some form of training. Everybody should have some new abilities, but you don't really see that in GT. You don't see people showcase what they can do. You only see, like, Trunks. He's still able to turn into a Super Saiyan, but you don't really get to witness what his potential is, you know, in terms of how strong he's gotten. The same thing could be said for Vegeta, Gohan, and Goten, especially Goten, man. Goten, they changed him up so much from what his personality was up in Dragon Ball Z. It was a fucking shame. It's like he's an even worse version of Gohan, because the only thing he wants to do is date girls, you know, be with his girlfriend. He doesn't really train anymore. And his look, I was not feeling that look. I don't know what Akira Toriyama was thinking. I thought he was going to be like a spitting image of Goku on GT, but they didn't do it like I wanted them to do it. So yeah, man. GT, it was just a rushed out story. The plot structure wasn't how I wanted it to be. The plot structure should have been a hell of a lot stronger. It should have been just like Dragon Ball Z. Dragon Ball Z had a lot of good plot structure, and the continuity was just fluid. All the enemies that you had to train to beat these enemies. You're not just gonna beat them in one day. Like when Goku realized that he couldn't beat Boo, you know, he went back to the drawing board. Got Goten and Trunks to go train up in the hyperbolic time chamber to beat them, and, you know, get their ultimate fusion or whatever. When they couldn't beat Cell, they did the same thing. They went back to the drawing board, trained. Everybody trained to beat somebody. You know, same can be said for Frieza. Everybody had to get stronger. You know, they had to get they beat downs. You know, and, you know, get their potentials unleashed. Goku had to, you know, master how to be a Super Saiyan to beat this guy. But you don't really see any of that in GT. All the enemies, man, like, I had to say the only good boss battles that they had would have to be Super 17 and Sin Shenron or Omega Shenron. Those were the only good battles. All the other ones were pretty much crap. You know, I didn't like it. And the musical score was crappy, especially up in America. I think, if anything, Funimation could have revived this series and made it more compelling to watch if they had Bruce Faulkner. Like, if there was any moment where they needed to have Bruce Faulkner, it would have to be this one, because the music up in America sucked for GT with that repetitive, you know, with those the same repetitive beat over and over. Like, everything was so boring, man. I didn't like the music on that. If anything, I would watch the episodes in Japanese, because the Japanese, you know, they had better music. But the score, the compositions, man, they were just so boring, and they made it. I don't know if they were trying to make it hardcore, or you know, just make it more, I don't know, make it more cooler, had like a laid back sound to it. I think that's what GT was going for, but it didn't do so good. It was just bad. And another problem that I had with this series, the narrator. I have to say the narrator was one of the main nitpicks that I had, because he was like, last time on Dragon Ball Z, Goku, after going up against Baby, realized that he could not. You know, it just, everything was so monotone up in the GT. I mean, what happened to like Cal Herbert? Last time on Dragon Ball Z, Goku, after realizing, you know, it didn't have the same feel of Dragon Ball Z. The continuity was messed up. The plot structure was just crappy, and it did not take them a long time to beat these characters. We got introduced to so many characters. Everybody had their favorite character on Dragon Ball Z. That's what I can say. Everybody had a favorite character, and Akira Toriyama, for the most part, he just focused on every character. I mean, especially the Saiyans. You know, every Saiyan pretty much progressed up in Dragon Ball Z. You got to see Goku get stronger. You got to see Vegeta get stronger. You got to see him achieve Super Saiyan. You got to see Gohan achieve Super Saiyan and Super Saiyan 2. You got to see Goten get his moment of light. You know, he got a chance to show what he can do. And like when they fought Boo and Kid Trunks, you also got to see what he could do. You got to see what so many other characters could do, but on GT, the characters, they just didn't get their spotlight. Sad to say, like, I wanted to see like Gohan exceed to new heights, but he was just a pansy boy. I wanted to see Goten, see what he could do. I wanted to see a dope Goten and a dope Trunks fusion, but they played with it. They act like they were gonna fuse, but they didn't. You know, and the way Goku went about his, you know, his transitioning and selling on like to new heights. He didn't even have to train to get to Super Saiyan 4. And for the most part, Super Saiyans are supposed to be like legendary creatures that didn't nobody know about until Goku turned into one. You know, only the Saiyans knew about it. Like, I don't think King Kai knew about it. But for some reason, Grand Kai knew that Goku was going to go into Super Saiyan 4. Now, how was that? Like, he knew it was a Super Saiyan 4, and the way they went about doing it was the stupidest thing ever. Goku has to grind coffee to grow his tail back so he can go into Super Saiyan 4. Dumb, just dumb, man. Like, it made no sense. It was just ridiculous, man. Like, I wanted to see the characters train. You got to train to get these things, you know. In order to gain something, you have to, you know, be willing to give your extra effort to get it. And Toei, they pretty much just messed up the story with it. I mean, there's so many other things I can go into, you know, in terms of the character development and everything, and the story. What are you guys' thoughts? Do you think, you know, give your opinions on some of the things that you think made GT such a failure, or do you think it wasn't a failure? Do you think it had a good story? You know, try to counter some of my points that I made if you want to. Yeah. But this is your boy S Review, coming in with another video. I will see you guys later. Peace.